Season 3 of The Handmaid's Tale continued to push the envelope as the darkest, most intense drama on television. I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Emmy winner Elisabeth Moss. Elisabeth, looking back at Season 3, which feels like about 600 years ago now.
I know, it really does.
What were you most proud of when all is said and done of what you achieved in that season?
God, I mean, I'm proud of a lot of things. It is difficult to choose, but I think I'm most proud of how we pulled June up kind of from the ashes and gave her a real purpose in getting those kids out. I loved that story. I loved the idea that she has been so focused on Hannah, and obviously still is, and still was, but I love the idea that she started to think a little bit bigger and started to kind of look around at all the other women who had lost their kids and what had happened to them, and take herself kind of out of it. I think she'd been sort of, a bit selfish. I mean, I don't blame her, but I think the fact that she was able to go, wait, you know what? I'm going to actually do something bigger than that. And I can't get at Hannah right now, and there's nothing I can do about that. I can't get to her. So what else can I do? And I think she started to think a little bit more globally. And I really, I loved that story. And it was a hard story to pull off. It was a hard journey to pull off. How do you make a character who is like consistently hit rock bottom again and bring her back up? And so it was hard to do, but I'm pretty proud of the way we did it.
Yeah, like that finale there's so much to unpack, because we've been following her journey about her trying to get back to her daughter and her husband or partner, or whatever you want to call it, Luke, husband. And it's really satisfying when she decides, no, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something for these children. And it happens. Yeah. But the end sees her being carried out of the woods by her fellow handmaids, and she's all broken and as usual. But she's smiling up at the sky. It's a brief moment of joy. How do you interpret the final scene? How are we supposed to interpret that?
Well, originally, actually, that voiceover that goes over the final scene was earlier in the episode when she's walking through the woods and with the other women and the kids, and we decided to put it in the final frame, in the final shots, because it was so clear that it was an encapsulation of this almost biblical journey that she had taken in those last few episodes, kind of becoming this Messiah, this person who was this Moses character, who was leading her flock. And so I love to put that video there. And I think I actually re-recorded it because I was like, oh, well, now if it's like the final VO of the season, give me another shot at it so I can like make it the final VO of the season. It's like, it's a different feeling. You're saying the last words of your season. So I re-recorded it for that reason. And Mike Barker shot that episode, directed that episode. Stuart Biddlecombe was our DP, and Mike is a extraordinary presence on our show. He did 5 episodes in season 3. He's directed every season since season 1, and was a producer as well. And he did an extraordinary job with a really difficult episode. A lot to pull off in an hour in that episode, and he just did an extraordinary job. And that shot was really difficult. It was one shot coming down, and we did it many times, and to the point of where we kind of got to that point where it was like, we have to go, we have to move on. I think we have it. Let's move. And we just kind of were like, okay. It was a difficult shot to do, and they pulled it off extremely well.
Yeah, love that episode. Let's talk about 2 other episodes before we move on to some other stuff. Household is episode 6, and it features you going to Washington. We see Gilead turned up to 11. It's very confronting. The costume design and the sets are really, really intense. We're seeing a different side of Gilead, right? But there's a moment at the Lincoln Memorial where you and Serena, played by Yvonne Strahovski, have this wonderful argument. It's very, very satisfying to see a lot of that truth come out. Yvonne was really happy about how that came out when I spoke to her. But what about you? How did you feel about that particular scene? It was very cathartic, right?
Yeah, it was an extraordinary scene to shoot. Derbla Walsh directed that episode, and Stewart again was the DP. And obviously, you're at the Lincoln Memorial. I mean, you're at one of the most iconic, special places that we have in this country, and no one gets to shoot there. You know, it's this very few people get permission, and we had to be really, you couldn't put equipment on the ground, and only up to 5 people could be in there shooting at any given time. So it was a very, very small kind of little splintery unit when we shot the scene with Yvonne. And it felt like we were doing a play. It was, there was no one in there. And you're in this extraordinary space, which is massive. And, the memorial is there because obviously there's no VFX done yet that has made it all crumbled.
Yeah.
So you're in front of this, who gets to do that? And they take the rope away, so normally there's a rope there, but there was no rope there, which gave me the opportunity to very naughtily, very sneakily break the rules and go up and put my head on it at the end of that scene, which you're not allowed to do. And I spoke to Derbla and I was like, I have an idea. I want to go up and I want to put my head on it and touch the memorial. And I was like, do you think I'll get arrested? And she was like, let's just do it. Let's just do it on the last take. So that if it's a problem, we're okay. And that's what we ended up doing. And I did not get arrested, or haven't been yet. Maybe I will after this.
Okay. Now you've let it out of the cat's out of the bag. I hope there's no cops watching this, or the FBI or whatever it is.
I know. I'm going to get a knock on my door and just be carried out.
Suddenly we'll see season 4 recast with some completely
yes. Or I'll just do it all from prison.
You could. Everything's Zoom these days. You'll be fine. The other episode that we should talk about is Heroic, episode 9. That's after the huge explosion from the previous, not explosion, it's this gunshot thing. But
I'm listening. I'm just closing my curtains because of the sun, but keep going. I'm listening.
Okay, I will. So Ashley Lathrop plays off Matthew, right? And she gets shot, and then she's in hospital. And a lot of that episode is really internal. But for me, the highlight's when June tries to kill Serena and pleading that it has to end. And Serena responds, you're meant to be one of the strong ones. And it just shows June at her complete breaking point. You're on your knees a lot. It looked like a really difficult shoot. It's very internal, but talk us through that one, because it looks like June at her breaking point, but then eventually she breaks out of that.
Yeah. That was, again, a very special, and you picked out the good ones.
I'll try.
Picked out the good episodes. I mean, they're all special in different ways, but that was a turning point episode for June for sure. I mean, that's when she does hit that rock bottom and is at her weakest, really, and has completely lost herself and become somebody that I think her treatment of Matthew is abhorrent and cruel, and she's become somebody that is not who she ever wanted to be, and isn't the person that should be leading this resistance. So it was a really important episode character-wise. And Dana Reed shot it, who also shot an episode in season 2 called Holly, which was the episode where June gives birth in the house by herself. So that was another kind of really big episode, and also an episode that was extremely contained. So it's really interesting because, as you know, the directors don't get to choose which episodes they do or what scripts they get. They just get the scripts that they get according to the schedule. And she just happened to get these 2 episodes, season 2 and season 3, that were really contained and all shot in this basically one room, which I love doing that stuff. So for me, it was fun. And we also took a kind of a different visual. It was Stewart again who shot that, and we kind of took a little bit of a different visual path than we usually do. Usually our show is really built in color, and the color is really important. And we took this almost kind of Kubrickian path with it, which I thought was really interesting. It was almost like a little horror movie, that episode. It was a tough episode to shoot, in the sense of you're in one room the whole time, but it was really enjoyable to be that contained. And I mean, hats off to Ashley, plays Matthew, who, laid in that bed for the whole episode and was somehow present, was somehow there. And she was so professional and cool about it. And she was really in it. I was performing off of somebody. you know, even though she was in the bed, I did have her there to work with, and she did an extraordinary job.
Yeah, the whole cast does. It's a really, really strong cast. Ann Dowds, Yvonne and Joseph, they're all amazing. Bradley Whitford, he recently told me that it's the most gentle and loving set he's ever been on, even though the subject is so difficult. And he attributes a lot of that to you, to be honest. Are you conscious about being number one on the call sheet and how it often sets the tone amongst the cast and crew? Like Bruce Miller said, it can be very difficult, but you keep it really professional and light. But that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really important, honestly. And it's, I am aware of it. You know, I am aware, having done a couple shows before, how, you know, the number one on the call sheet does kind of help to set the tone as to how everyone is going to be and behave. And I mean, but with this cast, it's like, I mean, and the crew, like, it's not a tough job, but everyone's so professional and has great senses of humor and loves their jobs. And like, so it's not like I'm doing anything extraordinary. I mean, they're really the best casting crew. But I learned that, ironically, I learned that on The West Wing.
Yeah.
The first time I worked with Brad, I was 17 when I started that show. And one of my first scenes is with him. He actually sent me a picture from it the other day, and I was dying. Like, we're both obviously like 20 years younger, and like, it's a real trip. But I learned that on that show from that cast, you know, from Martin Sheen, who's literally like the most professional, kind, awesome person. And the entire cast, Allison Janney and Richard Schiff and John Spencer and Brad and everybody, like, they just were so professional and kind and knew their lines and showed up and kept it light, had a sense of humor. And that's how I was like, oh, that's how you're supposed to be on set. So Brad was a huge influence in how I actually learned that. So it's interesting to kind of be able to turn it back around and show him what he taught me.
I love that. I love it how you worked with him when you were 17. He says that you mean a lot to him for that. And now the tables have turned and he's on a set where you're the number one. And yeah, it's so lovely to see that.
It's a really unusual situation, honestly. I don't know how often that happens, you know, and he has been so kind and so supportive and has given me so much strength, especially season 3 when we really were working together a lot. Like, he really gave me so much courage and strength, and really empowered me and let me have a voice and encouraged that. And it is trippy though when you're like, I'm directing now, so I'm directing episode 3, and I had to direct him in a scene, and I did have a moment where I was like, I cannot believe I have to go like tell Bradley Whitford anything right now. Like, I have to go give Bradley Whitford a note. Like, what is this world? This is super weird. And I was like totally nervous, and I was like, and then I gave him and I walked away, and I was like, that's probably stupid. Like, sure, that was a dumb thing to say. He's Bradley Whitford. He should do whatever he wants.
Oh my God. So that is so weird. It's like any profession.
So weird.
And you're with your mentors and people that you admire, and then
it's so weird.
Trippy.
He's just lovely.
But then season 4, so it shut down because of the pandemic. It's your first time directing, so I'm sure you put in a lot of heart and soul into getting prepared for it, and then it was kind of yanked away for a little while. So it's on hold temporarily, right? So what's the most exciting aspect, though, that you've seen so far? And obviously, how far away are we at that resuming, and how excited are you to resume?
Yeah, I think the best thing, the biggest discovery for me was, I think the thing I was most nervous about was talking to the other actors, because I'm not a trained actor. I don't have a really set process, and I was really nervous about that part of it. And it working with the actors ended up being far more magical than I ever could have imagined. I mean, you know, you've got this cast, it's like this incredible orchestra, and you're never they're always good. Like, every take is good. Every take is brilliant. But to get to go in and like give them an idea and then go and sit back at the monitor and literally was just like,
yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Just like eating my popcorn, like watching them be so brilliant, and so interesting how they would take an idea that you said or a thought, and then how they translate it and how it comes back out and how they interpret it. And so I became one of those directors who's like crying behind the monitor. I was like, I cannot believe I'm that director. I thought I would be like the more visual director, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I'm that director. It was like, you guys are so brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the thing that was a big discovery for me, that I didn't realize how much I was going to love that part of it.
You've got the bug, man. I can just see it. I can see it in your face
It's
when you hear it.
disgusting. I know.
This is
It's
it.
gross.
In 10 years' time, it'll be like, we haven't seen Elisabeth Moss on screen for such a long time because she's such an important Oscar-winning director and she won the DGA. I will see.
Well, the thing is, though, my favorite thing about, I love the director relationship. I love the actor-director relationship. And I rely so much on a good director sometimes. And that back and forth, my relationship with Dana, with Barker, like it's something that's really important to me. So it is, I don't think I'm ever going to become like a full-time director. So don't worry. Because I miss talking to a director.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. But speaking of awards, actually, in 2017, the Emmys was really special for the show because it swept across the board, including your win finally. All of us nerds were like, oh, finally, Elisabeth Moss wins an acting Emmy. It's like so many Mad Med ones and you never got it. Your speech was very heartfelt. You thanked your mum, who you learned from to be kind and also be a fucking badass, which I thought was crazy that you said that on stage. It was brilliant. Take us back to that moment, because it was a pretty special night.
It was really special. It really was, honestly. There's so much about it that was special. And as you know, like, I've been to that thing many times. I've been lucky enough to be invited to that party many times and not been invited sometimes. And, it's always, I know actors say this, and it's so, but it is actually really kind of an honor to be nominated. I'm sorry, but it is. It's like, to be one of, my brother always says, he's like, to be one of 5 or 6 performances out of all the performances, like, that's crazy. You've already won so much. But that said, of course, I think to win for something that I was also executive producer on, and I was, the content of which I was so proud of and so relevant, it was really special. And then, I mean, of course, it's all about the personal stuff, right? So, like, I had my mom, and I got to, like, look at her in the front row. And that was, I in that moment, I didn't see anything else. Like, nothing else was existing for me. It was just this, like, it was just an opportunity. I thank her all the time. It was just an opportunity for me to publicly say I don't know. It was just her and I in that moment, and I'll never forget it, obviously. And it was a very personal moment.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was also thinking that you've been so fortunate to play some really relatable and nuanced characters over your career, like Zoe Bartlett and Peggy Olsen and Robin Griffin, by the way, sporting a very, very good Aussie accent, not easy. And now,
Thank you.
You passed the test.
Thank you very much. It's not easy.
It is not easy, apparently. For me, it's great. They're all strong women.
Hey, you're doing an excellent Aussie accent.
Thank you, because I'm actually from Pennsylvania. But they're all really strong women, right? But they're all really, really vulnerable and nuanced and real. And I always wonder with actors like yourself, because you portray that in a really interesting way underneath the confident exterior. Does that come naturally? Is it difficult, challenging? Do you find that something that you always have to work on? What's it like for you?
Yeah, I guess just from the very beginning, I was never very good at uncomplicated characters. I never got the part. Like, I think people think when you get to a certain place in your career, they assume, oh, it's always been that way. And for me, it's like, it's only really been the last like 10 years that I have been able to pick and choose what I do. If that, it's maybe less, actually. I spent most of my career auditioning for things, and most of my career asking to be in things and not getting things, like 25 years of it. So for me, I guess, like, I never got I would audition for the WB shows. Now it's the CW for all your younger generation out there. Do you remember the
The
WB?
WB, and then there was also
Okay.
UPN for a while. Yes, the W. They were great, those shows.
Okay. Yeah, great. I would audition for them and I would just never get them. Like I never got a pilot. The first pilot I did was Mad Men. It just wasn't the kind of work, wasn't the kind of actor that I was. So I always was better at playing characters that had multiple layers to them and that were complicated, and whatever was happening on the surface was very different from what's happening inside, which obviously is very true of humanity and real people. So it was harder for a while. And then I think in the last like 10 to 15 years, the characters, and especially the female characters, of course, started to kind of get more complicated and get more interesting. And it became a little bit easier to find those characters that I could actually play and do. It's just nothing else is interesting to me. I don't really know how to not play somebody who has more than one layer to them. And I'm not bragging. I'm saying like, to me, that is humanity. That is who we are. And it's not interesting to me. If somebody's strong on the outside, it's way more interesting that they're falling apart on the inside. Or if they're falling apart at the beginning of the movie, it's way more interesting that they get it together by the end. So It's just what I'm most interested in, I guess. Does that answer your question
It
at all?
really does, because that's what we're
Okay.
The final question before we let you go, because you were back in Sydney to shoot The Invisible Man with director Lee Winnell. I haven't had that much fun watching a movie in ages. Like, it was just a blast. And it looked very physically challenging. It was very exhilarating. I loved how it talked about gaslighting. There's some parallels with Handmaids there, a little bit in terms of misogyny and stuff like that. What was your highlight from working on that film? Because you're getting a lot of like acclaim for that. It's an action film, but it's more than that.
Well, thank you, first of all. That's very nice. I think my highlight was I love scary movies. Like, I love the genre. And this obviously, as you said, has so much more to it, which is, of course, like when they first sent me the script, they're like, Blumhouse, Universal, like, want to do this movie with you, Invisible Man, they're doing like a reboot, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? First of all, I don't really make like studio movies. No one ever wants me to be in those. Second of all, like, it's The Invisible Man. What do I have to do with that? And then I read it and I was like, oh, I get it. Yeah, this makes sense. I get why maybe they want me to do it, because it's so much more. Like you said, it's about this, this poor sort of abused woman who's just being gaslit and then obviously finds her strength. So that was so interesting to me. But I also just really love scary movies, and I've watched them since I was like 10 or 11 years old. I've always wanted to do that. And when Us with Jordan Peele, which is also Blumhouse, I was like, this is so cool. Like, and I just watched Lupita and was like, wow, I want to be her. Like, that's so, what she's doing is so incredible. And like, I just looked up to that performance. And so I think the most fun part for me with those scenes, like the scenes where she's walking around a house and no one else is in the scene, and it's just me and the camera, and we're just playing with light.
Yeah.
We're just turning it on. And we're playing with like little tricks, like just making like the lock, the chain swing when she turns around and looks at the door, which is just a guy crawling on the floor, reaching up, making it swing, and then crawling away, like super low rent stuff. That was my favorite part. And then kind of like the running around and looking over your shoulder and being the girl in a scary movie in the way that I think it should be done. In this incredibly complicated character, that was the most fun part.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Look, we could be here all day, but I've got to let you go. Thanks so much for your time, Elisabeth. It's been really, really insightful listening to everything about Handmaid. So we're looking forward to season 4.
Thank you. So am I. We're hoping to get back soon.
Everybody go to Gold Derby, make your predictions, click subscribe, and watch all of our great contender chats.